Hey everyone. So I wanted to come on here and give my thoughts on the releases yesterday from WWE talent wise. Now, the day before, they had also released some names, not some notable names and some not so notable names from the office staff, the eternal staff, creative staff on Thursday. And excuse me there. And everybody pretty much assumed, and rightfully so, that after that it's going to be the talents that would be next. And for all we know, it still could continue today because that's sort of a tradition, somewhat with WWE, that on the Friday and Saturday, you know, following the office staff releases, personnel releases, that talent would also be released. Now, we're not entirely sure if anybody else will be released today. We'll find out as the day progresses. I mean, one person that stays on top of it, whether you like him or not, is Sean Ross Sapp, a Fightful. He stays on top of it along with others to pretty much figure out whether or not somebody's going to leave or they're not going to leave. There are talents that have made it seem like, hey, we're going to be let go, but their names weren't shown yesterday. So for all we know, those names still might get revealed today, but we don't know. One thing that I guess you could say Sean said in a live stream he did as these releases happened, and even some were happening even as he did the live stream. He said a quote, and he said something that everybody's been quoting, and that is, if Triple H wants you there, he's going to keep you there. If he doesn't, he's going to let you go, or something like that. But essentially, what Sean is saying is, hey, Hunter Pavlovich wants you to remain, you're going to remain. If he doesn't want you to remain, unfortunately, he's going to go with the decision to let you go. Now, here's the silver lining, though, with some of these releases. And I know you might say, well, what's silver lining? Well, here's what I mean. The main roster talent that got released, like Braun Strowman, Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler, Casey Canizano and Caden Carter, and so on. The main roster talent that got released, here's the silver lining, for them, excuse me. Here's the silver lining for them. They have 90 days as of yesterday. Today. Today is what? What is today? The 3rd? Today is the 3rd, if you will. Saturday. So they got yesterday the 2nd and today the 3rd. They got 90 days in between now and then. In between now and then to potentially be brought back. And what do I mean by that? Well, June 2nd and 3rd is 30 days. July is 60. August is 90. And guess what happens on the first weekend of August? Exactly. SummerSlam. What happened last time around SummerSlam when talents like Dakota got released? What happened? Triple H brought them back. He brought them back because he let them go take a break, take care of any issues they may, injury-wise and visa-wise that they may need to take care of, personal-wise that they need to take care of, and then also allow them to refresh themselves, allow them to, basically come back better than ever, maybe with a new character, maybe a new, outlook on life, if you will, when it comes to professional wrestling. So those that have, those that have the 90 days non-compete clause, they're going to be, more than likely, some of them might be brought back, right around SummerSlam. And that maybe maybe they were given the understanding that right now they need to be let go because, one, financially, setting up for something like WrestleMania, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of, cash, to put out with your TKO, Endeavor, WWE itself. It takes a lot of money. So to try to balance those, budget books, if you hold those financial books out, you know, I guess you could say straightly that the best way to do that is to cut costs, even if it's temporary. There's a lot of office staff that got let go on, that got let go on Thursday. Some of those office staff might be brought back before the year's out, and maybe they were told that. Maybe they were told, hey, you might be brought back, later on, or hey, we're going to bring you back later on. We just need time to balance things out financially, you know. And when that opportunity comes, for all we know, next thing we know, someone that of notoriety name wise will be brought back, or later than sooner. Maybe we'll find out, oh, this person's back. I thought they were released earlier, and so on. The same with the talent. The talent of the 90-day, non-compete clause are going to have plenty of time to think about, whether or not they're going to be brought back or they won't. And more than likely, there are some talents that got released that fans love, that fans are behind, and fans want to see back, like Dakota Kai. They want to see her back. Casey Carazano, Caden Carter, they want, they have their fans, and they're going to want them back, and so on. So I believe, as far as the main roster talent, if you will, that's on, that got released, I don't think we have to, worry about them too much of where they may or may not land. But more than likely, some of them, especially if fans want them back as soon as possible, or a certain talent pushes for them to come back, those talents will return. But right now, it's all basically a matter of, hey, we got to balance the books. We just spent a lot of money, on Las Vegas, on the WrestleMania stage setup, and so on. So we got to cut back on things. We got to, release people, internally in office as well as talent-wise. And then, if the opportunity presents itself, we'll bring them back. As far as the NXT talent goes, some of them have 30 to 60 days. Which means basically, come June, if Gigi Dolan, Priscilla Kelly, wants to go and become all elite, she can do that. Or maybe she wants to go to TNA because TNA likes her, she can go to TNA. And that's the other thing, too, we got to think of. Some of these talents might have been told, hey, if you want to continue working outside of outside of this company after your 30, 60, 90 days are up, we recommend, going to TNA because they have a connection with us. And oh, by the way, it allows you to have access to perform in the PC Center. Kind of get your reps up in the PC Center. Because you can't tell me that's not part of the deal, too, that they have with TNA, that being WWE. Because it is. They're not going to create a partnership with this without giving something back to TNA, in return. And one of those things is to allow their talent to train in the Performance Center, to get the reps in the Performance Center. So who's to say the talent that got released main roster-wise and NXT-wise are not going to have, it's early, I do apologize, but we're not told that, hey, if you don't want to come back here, but you still want to compete on a national level, go to TNA. You'll still be connected to us somewhat. You'll still have access to the PC Center. And guess what? You might even show back up on NXT, to represent TNA instead of WWE. So there you go. That might be what's going on, as well. That might have been what happened as well. We don't know. Now, one of the other things that Sean Ross Sapp brought up in his live stream yesterday is one of the main reasons, and this has always been a reason with, I think, any era of, any regime or era of the WWE or any wrestling promotion period, and that is if you're not going to be used, as much, you're not going to be seen backstage in some kind of segment, or you're not going to wrestle, on television as much as you would like, then why keep you around? And that's a good point. Why have you on the roster if you're not going to be seen television-wise, on screen, wrestling, or backstage, or whatever? Why keep you? And that's another thing, that makes some sense. They're not going to be utilized to where they could be featured more prominently, then it's best to let them go and wait things out. Again, if it's the main roster talent, wait 90 days and see what happens. Maybe if you figure out, oh, well, if we can get Dakota back, or if we can get Casey and Caden back, we can slot them in here and feature them more prominently, storyline wise and wrestling wise. And there you go. You see, that's another benefit too. When it comes to the 90 days non-competes for the main roster, the fact that it allows even those that had to let them go, even if they wanted to or not, to basically come up with an idea to get them back onto the roster later on. So I look at it like this. Again, the main roster talent that got released, they got plenty of time before maybe they get the call to come back. The NXT talent that's got 30 to 60 days, that's a different story. But I also guarantee, like I said, that maybe Hunter talked to all of them and said, look, if you, especially, especially those that have the NXT non-compete clause in the 30, 60 days, I'm sure Hunter and Sean said, hey, look, if you don't want to come back to WWE right away, we suggest going to TNA. We have connections. We have a partnership with them. You can wrestle there, represent that company, and still have access to the PC, still show up on NXT, and so on. So I think, if that's the case, and it more than likely is, in my opinion, we'll probably see these NXT talents that will let go, back on NXT television a lot sooner, but under the TNA banner and under TNA contracts. I mean, look at Indy Hartwell. Okay? Indy Hartwell was let go at the beginning of the year, right? No one knew where she was going to head. No one knew if she was going to come back or if she was going to go to AEW. But where did she go instead? She goes to TNA. Because guess what? TNA has a contact, if you will, partnership with WWE. So now Indy Hartwell can show back up on WWE television, NXT wise, and even maybe Royal Rumble wise next year, representing TNA. You see, that's the benefit of this partnership. That even the talent that gets released, they're not going to be totally gone from WWE if they're suggested, if they're suggested professionally and for experience to go to TNA, be part of them, because they would still have access to the performance center and stuff like that, and still be able to show up on NXT and everything in the future. So that might be the case as well. And for all we know, maybe these talents that get that suggested and do that, like let's say a Gigi Dolan, Priscilla Kelly, let's say they do that. What happens? What happens if, I'm trying to think, and again, it's early, I do apologize, it's 8 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday. But what happens if, let's say, Gigi Dolan does that? And she goes and she decides to stay Gigi Dolan, or she goes back to Priscilla Kelly, but, and she's under TNA contract, but then she doesn't show up in TNA, but she still continues showing up on NXT like nothing's changed. You never know. That might be something they're working out too. You don't know. We don't know. We don't know. I don't know. But it would be interesting to keep an eye on. The point I'm getting at is, yes, it sucks that they lost their jobs, but there's always a silver lining in the end. For the 90-day non-compete, they might get called back, or they might have been suggested to go to TNA after the 90 days are up because of the connections with WWE. And the same with the NXT talent that has 30 or 60 days non-compete left on their contracts. They might have been suggested the same thing because of the connection. But we'll see. I mean, if some of them decide, hey, I want to be all elite, that's up to them. That's up to them. They can try seeing how things are over there, but the end result could be either, positive for them, or it could be negative. We don't know. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, follow me on all the platforms you can find me on, as described in the description box. But give me your thoughts. How do you feel about the releases, that happened yesterday, talent-wise, as well as creatively as well as personnel-wise, on Thursday? And also, do you think many more will come, even as you're watching this video, many more might come today or not? And do you think maybe I'm onto something about, some of these talents, going to TNA because of the connection with WWE, thus allowing them to still show up on WWE television NXT-wise in the future, as well as going into the Performance Center, to get in reps and training. Let me know what your thoughts are, and until then, I am out.